So welcome to the AFT Construction Podcast today. We're grateful to have Ty Udell with us today, founder of Done Today. Welcome, Ty.
Hey, Brad, how you doing?
I'm doing really good. And I was very excited about having you on today. And I know that our listeners from, all levels of the industry are going to get a lot out of this episode today because of your amazing background. You have understanding of technology and systems and how that can make our life better, which is something I'm looking for, and you've actually solved something that I really need. So thank you for making time for us today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have to give a plug in, Ryan with CBUSA, for those that are listening. CBUSA is a group of national builders. We're a buying group, and he made the introduction between you and I. And it really caught my attention, from our first conversation, because one of the challenges that we have as a builder, it's just really slow in construction. The industry is, we're not adapted to change, to technology. We're behind the curve in comparison to other industries. So let's start with that, Ty. Your background is in tech, not construction. So set the stage. What's a little bit about your technology background?
Yeah, absolutely. So I worked in the high-tech sector for Cisco for over a decade. Worked at companies that really were progressive in the high-tech sector, and that's actually how the company came about. Is I was sitting in a parking lot and getting ready to go into a customer, and my wife called me. We had just sold a new construction home and renovated an older home built in the 1960s. So we took out that beautiful blue shag carpet and the avocado colored toilets and all that fun stuff, and the dishwasher just started just puking water all over the floor, and so that was where the idea kind of started.
Well, it's interesting because, a lot of times, with the listeners, we kind of dive into the meat of the subject. But what's interesting about you, the reason I wanted to take this a little different direction is because of this story, this background, where here you are at Cisco, and maybe I'm jumping the gun, but you were working to create an app, right? Or a system to expedite being in the deli. I know when I go to the market, you typically pull that little tab with a number on it, and you were creating software where now people can order online and have, deli meat sliced and prepared, to avoid that wait. Is that correct?
Yeah, there was a big grocery store chain, and they were working on trying to figure out how do they get deli meats, cheeses, ordering sandwiches, basically done through a mobile app. And so there was a project that when I was working over there, they were working on that. We were providing a lot of the infrastructure and systems and technology as they were writing that application. So it was kind of neat.
Yeah, and what's interesting, so when you look at construction, the comment that I always hear is, "Hey, Brad," or I've thought, well, how do you expedite labor, right? How do we expedite, these tasks that you need someone in there, and that's fine. That is a real part of our business, a labor-driven market. But the issue is the manpower from the oversight and management. And one thing we struggle with, we have this amazing design book from our designers and these architectural plans. How do we transcribe that information to our customer? And that's that handoff. These are things where we could expedite us as a company. So, in follow-up then, Ty, talk to us about the story, kind of where your idea and creation for this app started with the dishwasher issue.
Yeah. So we were sitting there. I was sitting there in the parking lot. Like any good salesperson, you try to get there about 20 minutes early. You're sitting in the parking lot going over some notes. My wife called and said, "Hey, the dishwasher, there's water all over the floor." I said, "Okay." And so we called the dishwasher company, and they said, "Okay, yeah, somebody will call you tomorrow and schedule a time when somebody can come out." I said, "Man, I've got 2 inches of water on the floor." Thankfully, it was this travertine floor, so it was nice. It really, water wasn't going to be a big issue with it. But going under the cabinets, I was worried about mold, all of those kinds of things, and had to get that leak stopped first and foremost. So I said, "Okay, what am I going to do?" And started calling through the list of Google, right? Google searching and calling through. And yeah, we can come out on Thursday. And this was on a Tuesday. And so that wasn't going to work. Finally, when I got to one that was available to come out, they said, "What's the make, the model? We'll try and bring some parts for it." Oh, my goodness, I have no idea. And, I'm an hour from home, didn't have any of that type of information. That's where I got a little bit of that aha moment of I need to have these big items, these big ticket items, more information on my home so that I can deal with things more rapidly when either problems happen, et cetera.
And then,
oh, go ahead.
No, yeah. And so you had mentioned out the dishwasher. So here you are. Here's the pain point, right? I mean, for anyone listening, when we think of sales, marketing, for us to be successful as a company or to build a successful brand or product, it's solving the pain point for our customer base, right? So here you are, you're thinking, okay, my dishwasher's leaking. I don't have that information ready available. I don't know the serial number. I don't know the make and model. I don't have that. And then fast forward as well. Now you're remodeling when your kid, for a future child that's going to be born, right?
Yeah. So fast forward about 2 weeks after we get that situation dealt with, and I go to Home Depot, and I'm going to be super dad, right? My wife's pregnant with our first child, and I was just so excited to build a nursery and to go about that whole experience that I jump in the car. I went to Home Depot. I'm walking through the aisles. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to do some pink walls. We're going to do chair rail around. This is going to be a really cool experience. And I'm walking around and trying to figure out what I need to get. And I'm getting help. And they said, what's the size and the dimensions of the room? And I'm thinking, man, why don't I have my floor plan with me so that it's an oddly shaped room. I don't have the exact dimensions. I didn't have that. So I felt another pain point. I walked over to the paint department. I said, hey, I want to paint pink, and kind of had some colors that I was looking for. And they said, well, what color is the wall? I'm thinking, man, why this more and more of this information I just don't have at my fingertips when Home Depot for my 90th trip for that project, right? And I'm thinking, man, I need to get some air filters. I haven't changed my air filters since we moved into the house or finished the completion, and I need to get that done. And I realized at that point I didn't have the size of the air filters right when I was walking around. I said, okay, that's it. I've got to figure out a way to be able to have maintenance reminders on my home, help me take care of my home better. Be able to have all my information on my home so that when I'm at Home Depot, if I'm on vacation and something happens, those different aspects do I have on it. So that was kind of the inspiration behind the application, and then tailoring that into helping builders going through that same process, right? They give 3-ring binders to most homeowners, or they stuff all those manuals in a drawer. And we kind of thought, okay, we've got this concept that really started at the homeowner, and we started to work backwards on how many different pain points can we solve with this for the homeowner and to enable a better customer experience for the builders. That's kind of where it really started to spawn.
So it's interesting. I mean, here you are as a customer, right? You have a home and you don't have this information ready available. As you mentioned, okay, I need the information for my dishwasher. I need to understand the paint to know if I need to put a primer down to repaint the walls, my filter, what size are my filters for my, return air and so forth that I need to change. So you identify this pain point, and before we dive into some of the attributes and, benefits of this app, which we're using here at AFT, and I just had my production meeting, which I'll give you some feedback on that, which was pretty amazing. So you have this idea, and really, here's the difficulty now. You have this epiphany. You have this idea of, okay, we're going to create this app. It's going to solve this. Now is the complexity part. How do you take that idea and then begin the process to execute it, to reality?
Yeah, that's a great question. Crossing the start line is the biggest challenge. And I'll rewind one step. And when I was in college, I've always had a number of different ideas just from different types of pain points going through, and I never acted on them. And finally, with this one, I said, I've got to cross that start line. And funny enough, I was riding on an airplane, and I was sitting next to someone, and before the plane took off, they were talking about, obviously they were on their telephone as everyone is before the plane takes off. And they were talking about getting companies, entrepreneurs that were trying to get their ideas off the ground. And it kind of hit me at that point that I've got to get across the start line. I've got to get to some type of a prototype that I can see this benefit for myself. The need was there enough for me personally that I said, this is worth my own investment for me to be able to figure out. And that was as soon as I crossed that start line, then it was like the dominoes started to fall and everything. I was able to get momentum moving, but it was almost that headwind of what do I do first? So that was, once I got past that, it really seemed to to start to work.
So with app development, which you're in technology, right? There's a lot of research and development. There's, creation in the app. And so, is that similar to other businesses where Ty, you're like, hey, okay, I need a startup loan. I need some money, maybe some investors, how do you start putting together that package? Or is this just something where you had the experience and understanding where now you could start that app creation and development yourself?
Yeah, so I don't write code. I'm not that technical from that standpoint. I was fairly frugal in kind of going through, so I had a little bit of funds that I was able to put toward this project and bootstrap it myself, which I'm really thankful I was able to do. I also leveraged a number of mentors. So just like anything, people that have been successful in starting businesses, in bootstrapping companies, that's where I started to look for as once I crossed that start line. So to give me guidance and inspiration and to help take the blinders off of, okay, I've got this one specific problem, but solving that problem, yeah, that's the end result. But how do you get to that point? And funding is part of it, getting the right app developer is part of it, getting that customer journey or that journey through the application. And there's some really good app development companies that are out there that can help kind of go through a lot of that process.
So when you say mentor, I know for me, I mean, that's one thing I wish I would have leveraged social media sooner. And I speak to this quite often, is that the advantage of social media, it's a connector, right? And I look at how my relationship has been built with, colleagues around the country and the mentors they've been to me. And then, I mean, look, through these channels, that's how you and I connected, right? So in your field, are these people willing to just say, hey, Ty, I'm willing to help you out just as, good grace, to be, for the reciprocity, to be a good mentor, to someone who's looking at be up and coming, how do you make those connections, or who did you reach out to?
Yeah. So one of the mentors that I have spent a lot of time with, I met them in a very roundabout way. I used to be a professional wakeboarder when I was younger. And so as I was getting older and in corporate America, one of my passions was helping younger kids learn how to wakeboard. And so on the weekends and in the evenings, I would help. And there was a boy that I was teaching and coaching. And one day on the boat, I just started having a conversation with his dad, and he had started a company, was a very successful entrepreneur. And so the conversation really went from building this kid's confidence and teaching him how to wakeboard to where I became the mentee, right? And so it was kind of, he was mentoring me and I was mentoring his son, and we just really developed this fantastic relationship in that aspect. And then I also started looking at my social network of different folks from different areas, right? I didn't come from the building industry, so one of my mentors was in the mortgage brokerage. And so as I started coming down this concept, initially my concept was going a little bit of a different path. It was more of that Yelp meets Uber for home services. And as I started looking at customer acquisition rates and cost, that kind of thing, I started looking at and finding, and he said, Ty, have you thought about the building industry? And as we were having conversations around it, I started pivoting that business model and started looking at, is that a better entry point that can help other companies help more people, right? And for kind of from that captive download perspective and helping them with their customers to succeed. And so everything was just kind of little pivots along the way from having different conversations with different mentors.
That's interesting. And one of the tough things to quantify, I mean, when you're so early in the development process as you were here, you don't have sales, you don't have a product yet, that you can sell. So how do you analyze that customer acquisition rate? Because that's one of the difficult things to say, okay, if I'm going to go into the Uber for builders or Uber for service, that's one method, or maybe I'm going to go the done today, from the warranty that we're going to get into what your product is. How do you decipher to say, no, this is my target? I feel that confident that I can capture, a good amount of revenue, with that customer acquisition rate.
Yeah, so it's real interesting, as you look at it from an app perspective, going and marketing into the App Store, Uber, Airbnb, they were extraordinarily successful because you use those applications quite regularly. Your air conditioner doesn't break regularly. Maybe in Arizona it breaks every spring. Out here in Raleigh, it's pretty warm as well. But it's not something that you use every day. So how do you assign to that need and to get to that larger base? And so as we started testing the waters on I knew from a homeowner perspective, it was a big value add. As I started tying it to what the builder produces in a home that you're spending $300,000, $500,000, $1 million on, a friend of mine had just built a beautiful home actually in Scottsdale, and as I was going through this, I was interviewing, I was talking to a few different builders, seeing if that need was really there. And when we were going through it, they kind of said, yeah, in 2008, 2009, we constricted, we wanted to keep the lights on, we really pulled everything back. And as things started to grow, we didn't put back into the business on that customer experience. It was still more of that customer satisfaction as opposed to that all-encompassing customer experience. And so that's where I really started to kind of take a look at how we solve that for the builders in enabling that customer experience where everybody's using mobile phones. And I'll use an example. If you look at Domino's Pizza, just the experience of when they went to online ordering and then ordering over a mobile app and then Twitter and messaging orders, they truly are a technology company that just delivers pizza. If you look at kind of that methodology of how they revived their company by going toward the customer experience. Granted, they were making better pizza in the process. Yeah. That experience of knowing that your pizza is being built, watching it go through, and just that bar going across. Everybody watches when downloads are happening on their computers, and being able to see that from a pizza aspect, said, okay, I can help make a transition in the building industry.
It's interesting because I do want to dive into that right now because, for those listening who are wondering, okay, well, what's the technology that Ty's speaking of? So one of the needs that we have, so for example, where this really intrigued me, I look at the time that my team puts in. So when we are building a custom home, and these homes are very complex, right? There's a lot of time that goes in pre-construction, through design, through architecture, through build. At the end of the project, we have a 3, 4, 5-inch binder that we give to the client. And in this binder, we hope that everything's updated from our side. At least that's our goal, right? And it should have grout colors, paint colors, the design book, the architectural details. And so really, and then also the subcontractors and trade partners and suppliers that worked on the home and supplied product. So the goal is that, hey, in 6 months down the line, if there's an issue with electrical or plumbing or the appliance, that we have the manuals in there, we have the spec book, we have the serial numbers, everything's been put into this book. But the challenge we always have, homeowners get it, who knows where the book ends up, right? Or they're calling me, hey, Brad, what's my grout color? I don't know. I need to do a grout touch up, or my tile guy's going back for a warranty claim. Brad, what's the paint color? What's the sheen? Do you have the code from Dunn Edwards? I'm not really sure. And we spend so much time going back through our archives, through our emails to figure out, okay, well, I think this paint color changed. Here's a design book. And so that's my need. That's where, that's been a pain point for me. And in essence, you saw that. So walk us through just the app as it stands today, through the trial and error and through the feedback you've received.
Yeah. So the app as it sits today is truly taking that 3-ring binder that you give to your homeowners and converting it into a mobile app. So your floor plans, your paint codes, all of your pertinent documentation, all of those items that you just rattled off, being able to put those into someone's digital wallet or their phone, if you will, to be able to have anywhere. So when they're standing in Home Depot, as we were interviewing builders, those were some of the challenges that we saw. Hey, it's 2 years down the road. Somebody's standing in Home Depot wondering what their paint color is. Does that happen to you often? And as we were out at the International Builder Show, we were asking that question a number of times, and that happens more than right? and so just the paint codes, some of those documents that people come back to, that they're so excited about the closing of their home. If they got emailed to them or something like that, it gets buried, it gets lost. and being able to just have that readily available for them when they need it.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I had Andrew Patterson on, a few months ago, and Andrew's a custom home builder in Newport Beach, California, and he made the comment. He said, when you're in business long enough, that your tail, every home you finish, your tail gets longer, and it gets to the point where your tail is really long, right? So, there's a lot of danger zones there, and how do we work through that? And so what's interesting is, what I've seen from your app, just from our initial meeting, and then how we've incorporated it now with one of our customs, is now we have a resource where all the information's on there. And what I will speak to is, not only is it a database where now we can put in all the wallpaper specifications and the paint colors that we talked about and the serial numbers and the model numbers, but you've taken this a step further where we have an opportunity now to have warranty claims. So if the client in 6 months has a major drywall crack or, a cabinet that needs adjustment, they can take a picture, they can put in the app, we get notified, we can resolve that. Or a step further, with this serial numbers and the model numbers of the appliances, you also have links to Amazon or to the website where they can buy the water filters for the refrigerator, where they can buy the air filters for the return air that we spoke about. So you've not only solved everything in one spot, but there's also ways for the customers now to have the ability to order, make claims, and track everything on their maintenance to-do list in their house.
That's correct. Yeah. So it'll send maintenance reminders. That way it'll link to your Amazon Prime. You can really minimize the amount of steps in taking better care of your home. And then as well, if you go to do an update or a remodel to your home, if you like in my instance wanted to paint a nursery for a baby that's coming along, you can add additional paint colors and subtract paint colors. You can add additional documents. It's not just a one-time binder. It's really that living tool that goes along with your house.
So what would be your sales pitch to designers and architects that listen? From a builder side, I know we're always looking at ways, okay, how can we, better ourselves from the competition with technology, right? How can we build more efficiently? How can we build better homes? And I look at this, a lot of my clients are out of state. So we use Builder Trend, which has an owner portal, which the clients now can use, for daily updates and logs. And now, for me, I look at this and say, okay, ex-client, well, we also have this amazing app. Let me take you through this where, here's an existing home. Here's all the specifications. Here's every trade partner on your home. Here's their address, their phone number, their emergency number, their logo. And so it's this living, breathing document, as you mentioned. How have you bridged that over to architects and designers to incorporate them in the process?
Yeah, it's really that bespoke experience, that customer experience. Because I created this as a homeowner, it was really, we started at the end user experience and worked backwards. So when you think about it from architects and designers, as they're going through and collaborating, it creates more of that social aspect build during the construction. So as they're working on their designs, as they're working on those documents, they can upload them in there. The homeowner can open their app. So when you sign a contract with a client, you can get them the application right away. So then those first documents that start flowing can be put in there, and it can also kind of help you keep a track record. So if decisions were made or selections were made and then things needed to pivot, you could go back and see from the documents that you'd uploaded exactly where things were at. You could take progress photos so that a lot of it pre-construction photos, post-construction photos. That way the homeowners can add additional photos after they move in, when all of their furniture is in and they're having a good time by the pool. Those kinds of things, they can include those different photos to their house.
So let me ask on that, because I know from our side we can input the plans and the elevations and all the specifications to the house, as well as future ordering and maintenance reminders, to change air filters and so forth. Is there a capability for designers to input window coverings, furniture, wallpaper, which we already know that I mentioned, but all these little soft furnishings? Is that an ability for the designer to get that information in there as well?
Yeah, we can put anything in the application. Yeah. Which
is amazing. So going back to this, okay, so you solved this pain point for us, Ty. So going back, I mean, when you're, now retrospectively, as you're starting this app, you have this great idea, that it's going to work because you vetted that, you've been to the builder show, you've talked to builders, you've done your research, how do you now coordinate? There's some privacy in regard to app creation because you don't want that idea stolen. So how do you balance the creative side to the marketing and sales? Because you need marketing and sales, but you don't want to have that too early. So it's that cat and mouse game.
Yeah, that's always been a challenge, especially in the software space. You have to run stealth for a certain period of time so that as a bootstrapped entrepreneur, it's not a research and duplicate type of scenario. But then when you launch that channel and that launch channel, we're now in that stage of building that, right? So we went to the International Builders Show. Tech Home Builder is another conference that I think I've talked to you about. That's a really good one for qualified builders that are truly looking for that next generation piece or that differentiator. So we use those two in-person conferences, and a lot of those are now moving online with COVID. So it'll be interesting to see that dynamic. We're on LinkedIn and we're on Instagram, but we haven't hit those to the fullest extent yet. So that's where I've been going back, listening to some of your podcasts and being that student, right? And using you as a mentor on, okay, now that we're at that point and we're getting ready, we've vetted the application, we're feeling confident in it to be able to start to take that larger scale approach. And Ryan at CB USA has been a great example of reach to multiple builders when we can prove a value add. He sees it, and that's why we're on the phone today, right? We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that introduction. So.
Absolutely. And so when you're thinking about marketing and sales, and we can get into that, but part of this is, okay, if you're ready to start marketing your brand, which will now lead to sales, you have to do some due diligence, whether you're leveraging with large national brands, whether you're working with someone such as CBUSA and Ryan, how have you leveraged that relationship, from your conversation with one of the big builders at the Build Show? And how did that introduction even happen with Ryan at CBUSA? Is that research that you're doing to find out, hey, where's my best opportunity to find, some big players in here that can help leverage my brand?
Yeah. So with the International Builder Show was real interesting in that we were a very small booth, still operating fairly stealthily in a way that we were doing hypothesis validation, right? We had our product, we're there, we're getting the feedback, and a builder was walking by. I stopped them and I said, hey, do you guys digitize your home binders today? Do you give 3-ring binders to your clients? And they looked at me and said, nope, we're fully digitized. And I said, oh, I said, that's fantastic. How do you do that? Because if there was another product in the market, I wanted to know, right?
Yeah.
So, he said, oh, well, we give them thumb drives today. And then I looked down at my laptop and I didn't have a USB port. And I thought, okay, so if I don't have a USB port in my laptop, if I have to go to a home improvement store to get my paint colors, am I going to go and plug in to a public computer a thumb drive, and is it going to fall out of my pocket in between the seat crack on my way there? Am I going to lose my data? So I mentioned that to him, and at that point it was like that aha moment for them as well, and it just kind of kicked off some really great conversations working toward in a pilot. From that standpoint, CB USA, it was literally I started looking at how do custom builders, where do they go, and how can I reach them in a fashion that, Instagram, you're seeing a lot of folks from an influencing perspective, but are they the qualified buyers, or are they the folks that would make buying decisions on a mobile application like this? And it's interesting because those are the folks that are in marketing and in sales, not in IT, right? So it's a different conversation with folks that are running the social media aspects of a builder. And it's also different working with the folks that CBUSA and some of those build sourcing groups can put you in touch with. So we're trying to figure out, and we're working through the different channels to be able to get to the right folks that can see that vision of customer experience inside of the builders.
So, and what's some of the feedback you've received, as you pulled aside this national builder and you sparked his attention just by those simple question and answers, how are some of these beta testers, what's some of the feedback you're receiving from them?
Feedback has been great from a standpoint of this large builder. When they would move around when they would deliver their thumb drives, they were driving them around and delivering them to the homeowners in person. And so as we were doing demos and starting to get sponsorship, right, it really takes a division leader to sponsor you into different groups, because I classify those large scale volume builders. It's like steering a cruise ship, right? It takes multiple people at the helm to make sure that you don't run into the dock. So from that standpoint, they've started introducing us into the customer service folks, and that's where they were saying, hey, I spend 2 to 3 days a week driving around and delivering thumb drives. I could do that in a matter of seconds with these people. And so now all of a sudden you start winding back into, what is that hard dollar ROI of time for these employees, for mileage, for safety, for going green? If you're, thumb drives are one thing, but if you're still doing, paper binders and printing out all those manuals, it's also a green initiative.
I love that, because I think, we've spoken about this a few times on the podcast as pain points, right? That's a key word there, because anytime you're in sales or development, if you can solve pain points, and, I had Jeremy with Traeger on, and he said the same thing. If you solve pain points for people, in any business, you're going to be tremendously successful. And what you've done is you've created synergy where now, okay, so the builder has this app. It's going to save them, be more green, more efficient. They're going to save manpower. It's also a sales pitch. It's something that we can, for the users. So knowing what you know now, and it's always tough being Monday morning quarterback, because we're here for a reason. But if you were to start this process over, learning what you did in development and research and app creation, and then vetting the sales, what are some things you would have done to maybe expedite that process, or have you learned, looking back now?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I was thinking about that the other day. Failing fast is so important, and being able to get your product into the hands of users so that you can get that feedback much quicker in the process. So if I would have done things any differently, I would have said I probably would have scaled back the product a little bit to be able to take it in more of that bite-sized element, so that we could have gotten traction a little bit faster. I think I was trying to do a little bit more of that feeling of making sure that it's absolutely perfect before you release it. And just like anything else, if you're solving a need, even if there's bumps along the way, you can get past them as long as you're continuing to innovate and fixing them. So I would say that I probably would have launched earlier had I to do it all over again.
It's interesting you say that. I had so Mark Cannellari came on, and he was one of my early guests on the podcast. And what's interesting, he said something resonated with me. He said, look, Brad, we all make so many mistakes in this industry. Architecture, he's an architect, I'm a builder. One thing we're constantly dealing with is mistakes. How do we figure these out? How do we better refine our processes, right? And the thing he said, which is I think really important to the mentality of us as business owners, he said, don't focus on your mistakes. He's like, the reality is, like, us as humans, like, we're going to dwell on those. You talked about failing fast. Like, it's going to happen. There's going to be mistakes in the app creation. There's mistakes building, but most people won't remember those mistakes, right? Most people, even from the outside, you don't even see that, they're going to see the successes. So he said, focus on the successes, get there quicker, utilize those mistakes. It's okay to make them. And I think that's a great mindset, because had you have been maybe more adaptive, to say, okay, it's okay to fail. Let's keep putting in these different attributes and trial and error, and then that's going to help us get to where we want to be quicker.
Yeah, absolutely. It's if we would have gotten there a little bit quicker, maybe we would have pulled a different tact, or maybe we wouldn't have had as robust features right out of the gate, but we could have built into those. Am I proud of the product that we have? Absolutely. But could we have probably launched with a more slimmed down version? Yeah, we could have.
Well, it's pretty neat. So today, the feedback I had promised is, so today we had our production meeting. I know this is your first time hearing this. So we had our team, and Will had done, we had just finished our first project integration with you for a custom home. It's an ICF home. It's this amazing house up on the hillside. And so we're preparing for completion, in the next month. And we let our client know of this surprise we're going to give them, because, you and I just met, and we're going to give this to them, this app upon completion. But Will had done, he did a screen recording of the app of all of our information in there. And it was really interesting because only 3 people from my office have been working with the information, getting that to you as you're inputting it for us. And then to have my whole team there see that, the feedback was phenomenal. You could just see it catch right away that all of them saw it and said, this is amazing. Like this is going to save me so much time, especially the superintendent and warranty division and coordinator that get bombarded with all these questions and all the time, answering questions and resolving concerns and issues. Well, now it's all automated for us. And that is the key, right? The more we can automate things.
That's awesome feedback. I love it. I love it.
But it was just the same thing I had when you and I had a first call, and Ryan had called me after, and I said, yeah, this really hits home. So for anyone who's in app creation or has a good idea, like you had, here's a pain point. This is how I can refine it for the building industry or design, whatever it may be. What is one of the biggest surprises you had in app development? As far as that time that goes into the R&D portion of it.
The biggest surprise, I think I took a lot of the design elements for granted, just like in one of your homes, right? There, you walk in and you see the beauty of that home. You don't see everything that went into the walls and all of the architectural time and engineering work, everything that's fully behind that. And so as apps just became second nature for all of us, I don't know, I'm going to create an app, no biggie, right? This is going to be easy. And then once you started thinking about each one of those processes, from the sign-in to, okay, now how do we add homeowners so that they have that bespoke experience and they don't have to go through 8 screens or what have you, and really kind of taking it, and then just like some of the folks will give you advice on, write your email, then reread it and cut it in half and cut it in half again, and trying to make that experience one that you're really proud of, takes a lot more time than I thought it would. That was one of the surprises that I had, for sure.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, you spoke about this with Domino's, right? You talked about just the customer journey, and that's any successful company understands how to market the customer journey, the customer experience. They leverage that, they leverage the emotion, and because people, when they purchase or make purchases, or they select a designer or they select a builder or an architect, in most cases it's because how does that person make them feel, right? How do you feel? And it's the same reason why we purchase certain products. How does that make us feel? And so when you're looking at app creation, and this is important for you on the design side, us on the build side, how are we designing things? How does that, when we open the front door into a home, what are our first images? If we open the door to the powder bath, are we looking at the water closet? Are we looking at this beautiful backsplash? How are we positioning the home for photography? And in essence, for you on app creation is very similar. What's my landing page? What's my login? What is, how does this process go from A, B, C, D down the line?
Yeah.
So Ty, let me ask you this, where do you see the building industry going now? I mean, you're going to be a key part in making changes for us, throughout the industry. How do you see technology and other inventors such as yourself making an impact in the design build industry?
I think that immediately, then I think with COVID, the low touch, no touch type of experience, right? That was one of the surprises that we've kind of seen through COVID, and I think that just like anything else, that it was part of a catalyst that helped builders say, okay, I've got to think differently, right? It made all of us. I mean, prior to COVID, how many people ordered groceries on their mobile phones and had them delivered to their homes, or really leveraged Postmates and some of the Uber Eats type of apps before they just really exploded with COVID? I think that technological revolution is really starting in the building industry. I think COVID has pushed it a little bit, or made them lean in on it. So from that standpoint, from an app perspective, I think AR and machine learning and some of those other features are only going to continue to bring forward the capabilities. of how we build differently or how we leverage tools differently, so that, instead of manually entering data somewhere, it's now just, using the phone and the cameras on the phone and LiDAR and some of those other aspects to go down those paths.
It's interesting you say that, because for anyone listening, that whether you're in design, architecture, building, whatever it may be, in any industry, as you're thinking about innovating, COVID has taught us a lot, right? Because what you said, my customers are asking for this now. All of them, Brad, how energy efficient is my house? How healthy is my house? How's my air quality going to be? How is my, my water quality? Can I put a filtration system in? How can I automate certain things? What is touchless? We did some work with Kohler, and some of our clients asked for the Kohler touchless faucet. They don't want to touch the faucet. They want to put their hands and have it run. And so you start thinking about this. How are we specifying and researching? Because these brands, these manufacturers are going to be one step ahead. And how are we staying current? And you mentioned, that in the building industry, there's a technology, conference. And so how did you get integrated with them to now be on the forefront of some of the technological advances in our industry?
Yeah, so they had approached me at the International Builders Show, and they were always looking for those next generation or kind of those game-changing companies that are leading a change. And so we started having some conversations with Tech Home, and they invited us to come and be a sponsor at it. And I did that in December at their event, and it was an amazing experience, because the International Builders Show, it's a great event. There's so many things that you can see. You can literally get lost in the bath, the bed and bath,
Yeah.
bath show down below. It's just absolutely stunning, some of the things. And then you get up into that next build area, and you really start to kind of see. And I think they were going around finding what are some of those next game changers that is not in the industry today, but that can really make a dent, and make a dent easily, from a standpoint of it doesn't take a lot to adapt our technology. I think when we onboarded you as a customer, we had 2 calls that were maybe an hour long each. And it really wasn't a difficult thing. We leverage a lot from the collegiate community. So we've got interns from UNC, and we're expanding our intern program so that we can give back to the community, because we want to bring in that fresh thought, those fresh ideas, and those fresh concepts that can help us stay current and relevant, and think differently about how we're approaching it, so that we don't get stale.
I love that. And so how do builders or designers, how do they get up to speed with the conferences? The one you attended last December, I know there's one scheduled for this December. For those that can attend, where can they find some of that information, or at least technology that's on the horizon?
Yeah, I think, sorry, my dog was shaking down below the table. So, yeah, you always have to have a coworker near you,
Always. Yeah.
So from that standpoint, I think we're going to start to see more of an explosion of information available just in this post-COVID world. A lot of these conferences that are starting to shift to more of an online, I think we're going to be able to reach a lot more folks now that we don't have to travel and take time out. I think that's one of the biggest things. Las Vegas is always great for the International Builder Show, because it was a mini vacation for a lot of these builders that have worked so unbelievably hard all year, closed out their year in December, and then can kind of take a breath, relax, and come out there with their wives, significant others, what have you, and kind of see and start to experience what might be coming on the horizon. I think in the digital scape now, we'll start to see that information be a lot more readily available. So like the Tech Home Builder, they're not going to do just an in-person event in December. I think they're going to do an online event in September ahead of it, which I think is going to be great. It's going to be able to reach a lot more people.
And is that something that's typically for developers such as yourself that are creating technology to impact our industry, or could the common user go on and follow along the conference, or the information, or at least the notes from those meetings?
Most of the attendees to those conferences are builders themselves, right? So they kind of, I think they have a high volume track, and then a luxury track, and then a multifamily track. So they really try and attract the folks from those organizations that are agents of change inside. So it's not just applications. I mean, there are all sorts of different companies that are there, from one of them that I thought was really cool that we've been working with a little bit is called Greater Systems, and they're a startup that does gray water reclamation for communities that are in water constrained areas. I thought that was really cool. But then you have your big standard folks that have booths at most of the shows, and then you have some of those next generation ones.
So with COVID changing, I mean, this is going to change, I'm sure, your marketing and strategy, because you're not going to have a booth where you can just pull people aside and show them what's going on. So how are you looking at impact? I know you mentioned social media. What are some other avenues you're looking to market your business now?
Yeah, so we're now starting to think back on, okay, Instagram, more of our social channels, getting a better LinkedIn presence, starting to grow that base from that standpoint. I think that outside of that, we'll start to participate in more panel type discussions along the lines of the Tech Home Builder and some of those other trade shows. So I think that as we start to go, it's still a little bit up in the air for us from that standpoint as we start to grow. But to be honest, this is still something we're figuring out as we go.
I think we all are. I mean, it's funny, that you say that, but the one thing I found is that through social media, as you mentioned, I mean, it's a connector. And what I do like about it from our side, as I network with designers and builders and architects throughout the country, is that social media has enabled so much information, right? So it's at our fingertips where I can readily see. I mean, you mentioned the gray water, and I've seen companies out there doing the reclaimed water where, they're putting in storage tanks on a project, and we're going to be doing that now. Fortunately, we're going to be building the Professional Builders 2021 Home of the Year next year. And, one of the features is we're going to have an underground tank that's going to catch all the rainwater that now we can recycle and reuse for the irrigation, right? So here in the desert, it's going to keep that water at monsoon season, then we can reuse it. And so what we're seeing is that through social media, we're firsthand seeing some of the products and innovation around the country, as you're doing, Ty, here, where now a lot of our listeners can say, let's go check out Done Today. How can we utilize that for our company and our firm to be a step above the competition, to save time, and that's the key here, solve the pain points and expedite our processes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's next? What's exciting? I know now you're getting ready for your launch. You're getting ready to hit the marketing. What's upcoming for you guys, Ty?
So for us, it's really kind of growing in the aspect of reaching more builders. So back to your social aspect, the more builders that we reach, the more we can grow, and ideally having a lot of those, starting to highlight some of the success stories that we've had with some of these builders, I think is going to it's going to provide a lot more of that genuine reality of how it's helping, as opposed to what we can put out on social media in more of a post perspective. But if we can start to highlight what some of our builders or our clients are doing, I think that's going to help us. I think it's going to help them, just brand awareness for everybody, right? It's kind of the sense of community that I've felt since this COVID has happened. When you're walking down, a lot of the neighbors that maybe didn't say hi to you before say hi to you now, and I think that the online presence is probably going to start to continue to grow and build that community. So we're pretty excited about that. We've got some more innovations that we're looking at from the application standpoint, and more of a platform for the homeowner. So I'd love to go into more of those. Hopefully you'll be able to see them here in the next few months as we start to make the platform a little bit more modular and adaptable. We're also looking to do a lot more integrations with some of the building software to make that data capture into the system easier for builders, and a better experience for builders. So I think as we continue to retool and refine the product, it's only going to get better.
I love that. So, speaking of social media, what are some of your handles, website, where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, our website is www.donetoday, and that's DUNTODAY.com. And we're on Instagram @DoneToday.
And what about LinkedIn?
So we're on LinkedIn as well. Yep.
Good.
You can find it. It's we've got some work to do on our LinkedIn. So between myself and Will, we're going to be beefing up the LinkedIn. That's one aspect that we hadn't really spent a lot of time on. That was a mistake.
Well, no, it's good. It's good you're doing it now. The one thing I'll say before we close, I mean, for anyone listening, if you're not on LinkedIn, as Ty's beefing his up, the thing is LinkedIn it's an easier way to grow organically, bigger reach. There's a lot of qualified people on there, especially in the demographics you want to hit, no matter your brand or company. Spend time on LinkedIn, develop that. There's a lot of resources out there. So kudos to you. And Ty, can't thank you enough for making time. I know you're busy launching your new app. We're excited to showcase it. We'll be showcasing some of your product and demos on our social media channels. And of course, we'll publish all, the links to your handles and everything here and follow up from this podcast.
It's awesome. Thanks so much for your time, Brad. This has been a lot of fun.